February 22nd, 2020. We said goodbye to All Japan Pro Wrestling. February 26th, 2022. We say hello to All Japan Pro Wrestling as it's the sequel to our farewell series of TW 2016. We are back as Shohei Baba, Giant Baba, Mr. Baba, booking All Japan Pro Wrestling, starting in the year 1992, September to be exact, as that was after Mitsuya Masawa beat Stan Hansen for the All Japan Triple Crown title, and it just makes sense as far as the starting off point for a sequel series. We ended the series with Masawa beating Jumbo for the belt. Obviously, that's not what happened. In real life, they did have that singles match, of course. That was very fucking historic, but wasn't for any title or anything. We did it there. Now to start this series here in 2022, as far as for TW 2020 and All Japan, starting in September. And really, the big thing going forward with this series is the idea. We had the same kind of idea as far as we had a set time and end date for it, and we have the same thing with this. We're going to book from September 1992 till January 2000. 8 years. Long, long time. But I think we're up for the challenge. As for, of course, the intro, which, boy, let's get off of that screen because that is hurting my eyes. As, probably figure something out as far as that goes because that sucked. As for the All Japan series here, really, this mod in itself, I think it's the most completed mod that we are doing as far as a series on TW 2020. I mean, it's a Fleisch mod that's been severely updated over the years. And really, I think as a whole, it's, anytime you're going with an historic mod, it's 9 times out of 10, it's got a greater chance of being a very good mod compared to a real world mod just because it's so hard as far as updating and trying to change with the current times. It's almost impossible, and I always give the tip of the cap to those guys. But for this series, it's a mod that was meant for January 1992. That's where the Fleisch's mod starts. Obviously, we didn't want to start with that because it would be like a weird time period because it's still like Jumbo's still champ. He loses it to Stan Hansen, and then Stan Hansen obviously loses to Masawa. So really, that I felt was a weird transitional period. So we just went with pushing it up to September. And, when Masawa's champ, when Masawa's the figurehead, and he is the fucking guy. Just makes sense from that perspective. As for this series, we had kind of our formula where we kind of started doing, like going through like tour goals and stuff like that. And that this is the series that kind of started all that. It's going to be interesting because this is the first time I've opened up a mod. I'm like, wow, I don't have to change fucking anything as far as usually I have to change something regarding the events, like how many there are, taking away a tour. No, everything's pretty much set. I did have to add, there was one thing, it was actually the Summer Action Series 2. And as you see, 16 nights, and that's a long, long tour. There's a lot of these tours that are pretty long, and they're basically what they were for All Japan at that time. I'm keeping up with that. I think as far as a challenge for the sequel, we're booking mid-90s All Japan. It doesn't get any better as far as in-ring product. So I feel like to elevate what we did in the first series, try to do that. I know that might be something that people might go, wow, that's a lot of shows and that's going to be a long episodes. I understand that. I could see where you're coming from as far as that's maybe a little bit too much. And we'll give it a shot. This first episode that we'll be booking, it's basically since the Summer Action Series 2 is still going on as we're starting this, it's not going to be a complete tour. So you at least have that to kind of dip our toes in and kind of see where we're at. As far as in real life, the Summer Action Series 2 in 1992, there was a big time number one contenders match for, to see who was going to be Masawa's first challenger. And it was between Kawada and Taue. I really like that because that set up, of course, the first title match between Toshiaki Kawada and Mitsuharu Misawa. So we'll probably be doing that same thing that happened in real life. So it's just kind of funny that we are emulating, what All Japan, which probably for the most part we're gonna try to do our own thing, but there's gonna be times when I'm just like pretty much emulating what happened in real life, just from the standpoint of being a huge fan of that time period and being a huge fan of like making those matches important, because I very much felt like they did. The goal in the first series was we're going to end the series with Misawa beating Jumbo for the Triple Crown title. The idea here, having like, obviously Misawa, this is when he has his long ass reign. It's not going to be so long to where he can be like champ the entire like 8-year period. Sure, we could do that, but that'd be insane. But the idea is eventually to have Kobashi or Kawada, whichever, being the champ, to be their first, kind of Triple Crown title, which it's kind of, maybe we won't exactly go with that. That's the soft plan, I would say. Because really, Kawada he's ready to go. He's ready. And he could have been, when he beats Misawa in real life in 98, it was very much like a parent, like, they probably waited a little too long, but it was a big-time show, though, at the same time, so I get it. And also, Misawa gets knocked out in the match, so it kind of hindered that match as a whole. Then, obviously, Kobashi doesn't beat Misawa as far as for a title until, the Noah show. So, obviously, way past then. It's going to be interesting as far as how we're going to end it. I don't think there's going to be a huge, like, big-time plan, maybe, though. We'll kind of see how everything's rolling. Going 8 years in the future and kind of planning something, there's a lot of variables that could take place, and I'm very cautious of that. But yeah, obviously every first episode with mine, we go through the roster, we go through the titles, and that's, pretty much our first episode. We'll go through the champions first. Obviously, we know who the Triple Crown champion is in Misawa. The Unified World Tag Champs are Taue and Jumbo as of this period, which is, pretty awesome. I will say this regarding the tag division. So, during this time, All Japan would always vacate the belts before the tag league, and I always hated that. That's just something that I always was a stickler for. Obviously, I think it started in 87, I want to say, maybe 88, maybe even 89. But nonetheless, though, that it would be around the time where they would vacate it, and then the new champ would be crowned once the tag league was over. And I just think that's a terrible. Maybe not terrible, but just not a great way. It gives an extra importance for a tag league, that's for sure, but I think it's better that a champion either goes in or a champion doesn't go in to a league setting, and that way it can either protect the champion or set up for future title matches as far as that goes. And just stripping away a champion because of the tag league, I just don't think I'm a fan of that, so we're not going to be doing that. Is the junior champ, who's been the junior champ for almost 1,000 days. As, he has a long-ass reign in Masanobu Fuji. And, it's obviously anybody that has the belt for 1,000 days, that's fucking insane. We'll be looking to get the belt off him very, very soon. I'll just say that. And then the All Asia Tag Team Champs, which is a great team in Kenta Kobashi and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi. That match that is legendary with Doug Furnas and Dan Crawford. Unreal. That's a crazy-ass match. And to be able to have the start with those guys as champs is pretty cool. Definitely, as far as it's going to be a nice kind of change of pace going into the 90s. Obviously a different decade for what we've been booking as of late. And I think as a whole, it's a lot of fun as far as, it's a very period. That's a time period that's very near and dear to my heart. And I think as far as a roster goes, it doesn't get any better, really. From mid 90s, All Japan goes. I will say this: there were a couple of contracts that kind of got messed up because of changing the time, and I forgot to edit them, like Jun Akiyama's and Jun Izumida, and then Masaha Noe, like those three specifically. But I'm wanting to bring in the Malenkos plus Boris just for a road agent just to have, and obviously Gary Albright's the man. And we're looking to bring in Dory Funk at night because we already have Terry Funk on the roster, which we'll go through real quick with Abdullah the Butcher there as far as our first guy. I guess we'll just make it wrestlers, I guess, or actually just any in-ring role that would make sense. So yeah, Abdullah the Butcher, Kira Taue, of course, one of the four pillars. 31 years old as we start this off. He was 4 years in. He'll pretty much be great for most of this, and he's going to be a focal point. Al Perez, Andre the Giant, which he should technically have probably his last match as far as ever is December of 92. So we would have loved to have been able to just have it like a 4-month, contract. But we probably should have went with 3 months instead of 6 months, but basically he should be pretty bad as far as stats-wise, which is funny because we finally get to have Andre and Giant Baba, something I wanted to do in the first series but couldn't. But now we're able to do it, but so at this rate it's like, who fucking cares, because Andre's stats are shit. As Billy Black, rather, him and Joel Deaton were a tag team at that time. Pretty solid, like mid-card team, nothing too crazy. They're just kind of like just a Gaijin tag team, really. Same thing with the Fultons and Bobby and Jackie Fulton. They were basically Gaijin, kind of like fringe level, kind of junior team, necessarily, but really wasn't. Same thing with the Youngbloods and Chris and Mark Youngblood. They're freelancers, so we're definitely going to be jobbing them out, probably. Then we got, Dan Croft and Phil LaFon, and, Phil LaFon, and having Furnace and LaFon. I always thought they were a great team, as far as, we'll see how they do as far as in the mod goes, but I'm very excited to see how they work. Dan Spivey at this time. So Stan Hansen had been teaming up, obviously, with Brody, and then once Brody passed, it was DiBiase, and then once DiBiase got signed by the WWF, Dan Spivey was like their third option of teaming up with Stan. I'm not a big Dan Spivey guy. I thought his Waylon Mercy character was like unique, but I always thought he wasn't like the greatest talent in the world. We'll see what he does. If he's kind of like on the fringe level of like below 50s, we probably won't be trying to use him in the future, and we'll probably try to give somebody, bring somebody else in that can really fill that role with Stan, because obviously, Stan Hansen's the man. As Firecat, Brady Boone, Brady Boone worked as a lot of different kind of masked characters during that kind of time. I forget what we brought him in, but I think we had him be Battle Cat, which is just kind of, it is what it is there. He's just a, kind of junior heavyweight Gaijin guy. Nothing crazy. Of course, Giant Baba, which his stats, he's 54. He's not necessarily done, but he's basically done, as far as, like, in-ring wise. Well, I'm not sure if we'll, like, elevate anybody using him. We probably should, since his popularity is very high, but most of the time it'll be just, he's Giant Baba. We all know what to expect. Kind of like how we kind of booked him towards the end of the series, in the last series, where he's just kind of fringely used, or if he was used, he was on the undercard. So they have a lot of Giants, though, in Giant Kamala and Giant Warrior, which Giant Warrior is not great. It's not great at all. He is someone that we'll probably want to get rid of very, very soon. Very, very soon. And then Giant Kamala, kind of the same thing. All Japan, there were times where, and just as a fan, their Gaijin's choices were just like, if they were big, they pretty much got signed, which that was kind of the business at that time, so I understand that, but very seldomly, like, there in the late 80s, it was like the sweet spot of All Japan Gaijin use, because you had Brody and Hansen, you had the Malenkos, you had the Bulldogs, you had the Funks, you had just these great Gaijins being brought over. And really around this time, there's not a whole lot of like great Gaijin talent. Probably their most talented as far as like it's either Johnny Smith or Johnny Ace, which is just kind of we're obviously besides like Stan Hansen, the Miracle Violence Connection, and Terry Funk, but kind of outside the top four, that would be kind of like your next best guys, which we'll go into with Johnny Ace, Mr. John Laurinaitis himself. It's weird because kind of he's in the very kind of early stages of like his Japan run. He would very much be a focal point until the end of the decade. Where after Terry is not at the same level as he used to be, he starts teaming with Doc, and then once Doc is starting to, he gets signed by WWF, it's like, oh, well, we'll bring in, Mike Barton after he kind of flames out of WWF. So he just was very much, All Japan, very much a staple of having, like, Gaijin tag teams, and he's a solid hand. We'll see how he does. I'm not expecting a whole lot from Johnny Ace, but you never know. And Johnny Smith, a guy that, was very much, an English technical wrestling mind, and I think as a whole is very much, I wouldn't say revered by Japanese fans as far as from that time period, but he very much is someone that from his notoriety as far as he isn't like on the same level as like a Dynamite or a Davey Boy obviously, but I think he tried his best to fill that role of being like the English very very great technically skilled guy. We'll see how he does. His pop is not bad. His technical skills I figured would be pretty good. We'll see how he does. Jumbo Tsuruta, of course. Jumbo's 41 and he's coming towards the end as far as he was at the peak. 80s, the late 80s was his era. There's still even the early 90s helping put over Masawa and whatnot. But now it's kind of like, we're teaming with Taue and we're doing Tsuruta Gun. But at this point, it's very much like by the time it gets to like 93, 94, it is very much like, it's, veteran Jumbo Tsuruta, not like main event, the guy, Jumbo Tsuruta. But still, he's, the popularity's pretty crazy. That's awesome. The skills are still there. So that should be very exciting to see. Obviously, Kenta Kobashi. That's crazy. Pro Wrestler's only 79, but I guess that makes sense in a way. I figured it would be at least close to the 80s, but 79 is nuts. As for someone obviously still, though 25 years old too at the same time. But I just, I'd known at that time, him and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi was a great tag team, and you could kind of see, like, from there. And also, he's starting to wrestle with some talented guys, obviously being one of the four pillars and being a part of the Super Generation Army. It's tremendous. Orange Crush himself. As in, Asabuchi. 38, that's a rough 38, but technically is very, very skilled. It's just at that point, you've been the junior champ for like over close to 1,000 days. It's time, it's time to put somebody else over. And I think that's what we're going to do as far as not at this tour, tour that we're going to be booking next, but the next tour, which is the Giant Series, and it's also the 20th anniversary tour for All Japan. I just feel like that's a perfect time to do that. So yeah, the first kind of tour we're booking, it's a lot of much of a feeling out process and trying to see where everybody's at on the roster. It's Mighty Inoue. Oh, actually Masawa, but then there's Mighty Inoue though. Yeah, they're, veteran talent, veteran mid-card, lower mid-card guy. As, the man who's been referred to as God himself. His popularity is probably a little too low, I would say, but that's okay. We'll make it work. As far as Masawa, 87 from Pro Wrestling, that makes sense. We're in prime Masawa. He's 30 years old. We got until the obviously end of the decade to see what he does. He's God himself. And it's going to be a hell of a run to be able to book him as the ace, as the figurehead, because we rarely do that on the channel, that where we actually have it lined up where someone is the figurehead in the game, and it's the mega push, from Masawa. We get to try and either replicate or even make it bigger, make it smaller as far as that reign goes. So it's going to be very, very exciting. As Mitsuya Yamamoto, another obviously veteran undercard guy, son of Ricky Dozan, is Toshi Akuma, another, 51 years old. He's probably going to be, gone sooner rather than later. Richard Slinger, one of the most unique All Japan dojo guys. Obviously, he is from American parents, but he's born in Japan. And just as far as going into the dojo, I always wanted more from him. So he's going to be someone that I'm going to be intrigued as far as trying to elevate him into a level that he never really was as far as real life. So that's going to be exciting, hopefully. Unless his stats, he just can't get to that level. But I'm hoping we can at least try. Rusher Kimura, of course, veteran undercard guy. Satoru Asako, as he was part of the 91 All Japan Dojo class. Pretty solid. I think he just was overshadowed by just every kind of guy during those early 90s, of course, that either graduated or, when you have Kobashi and Taue around that same, obviously, Kobashi and Taue were a couple of years before him, but still, when you have those two guys that you have to follow as far as from your classes, that's tough. Very, very tough. As Scott Armstrong, obviously known for more of his refereeing here, would love to have Brad Armstrong instead. We'll probably let him go, to be honest, just his pop's not great, unless we just use him as a ref, which I'd be kind of, he's 33, sure, his stats aren't great, but also, too, he could just be there to help, have people beat him. Stan Hansen, of course. The popularity makes sense. The brawling is crazy, 98 for someone in his 40s. I mean, really, Stan, weirdly enough, I think a lot of people probably would have assumed his career was kind of like, once the Four Pillars come in, that it's like he's taking a back seat, but he's really still booked as like the strongest gaijin for a good bit. And then Dr. Death takes over for a hot while as far as he gets his kind of singles run. But guys like, Terry Gordy, we'll talk about, even though he's 31, he just doesn't, he gets the, his career takes a complete left turn as far as, just medically was never the same and could never recover, but that opened the door for him to, have this crazy-ass, awesome, All Japan run. The first ever Japanese pro wrestling heavyweight match I ever saw is him and Kobashi, where he fucking damn near murders him. And that's very much a point where I was like, this is incredible. Like, what else is there? And you go down the deep rabbit hole of Japanese pro wrestling as far as heavyweights go. And it's been the best thing, in the world as far as Japanese pro wrestling at times. And at times it just, you've seen people do things to their bodies as far as that they definitely shouldn't have done, taking these insane bumps. That part is never great, and we lost a great man because of it. Hopefully we can at least, even in this game, even though it's a simulator, even though we shouldn't really think that far ahead, but try and at least get away from the crazy ass bumps even then. So we'll see if that works, though, because as far as it's going to be tough to kind of fix that, really, as far as the TW, you're kind of limited as far as you can't, make it to where there's, not insane, crazy suplexes and spots. It's, as far as you'd have to change the entire product, and it wouldn't really work. Of course, Terry Funk, which will bring in Dory Funk Jr. to have, the Funks. Anytime we can bring in the Funks, it's great. But it's going to be a lot of fun. As far as I'm surprised Terry's not a freelancer, so that's great. Terry Gordy, of course, Tommy Rogers, which we could also have, part of the Fantastics. If we don't want to do Jackie and Bobby, we could also do Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton as far as the Fantastics. So there is that. I'm not sure exactly which one we'll go with. The Fantastics are a bit of a better team, I think, usually on paper, but you never know. Then, of course, Kawada. Yeah, Dojak Kawada is the man. Super K. He's going to beat the shit out of people. So awesome. And then Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, of course, All Japan Dojo classmate with Kobashi. So about to say. I didn't want to fuck up, but I was I'm 99% positive. Yeah, they, all Japan dojo classmates. He's, was someone that I think never reached that level, but obviously when he was teaming with Kobashi, it was incredible. And then Yoshinari Agawa, of course, future teammates of Masawa and the Rat Boy, and still going strong. Even, crazy to think, not even, like, I mean, from 2022, still going strong. Nuts. Even though it's not the greatest thing in the world. I mean, that is pretty much where we're going as far as this intro goes. Nothing more really to say. I will, say this as far as, I'm excited to see how we go, but there is that nervousness. Anytime you're starting a new series, you get the nerves start to kick in, but especially with this, when it's something I've already done on a previous game that is very much like, I think people assume that's like either my best thing or that's their favorite thing that I have done with TW, and to try to do that again, it's very nerve-wracking. Fingers crossed, everything goes well. We don't have a Masao injury on the first tour, and he's out for like a year, and that just derails everything that we're hoping for. But I'm excited to see, once we bring in, Gary Albright. That's always awesome. I love Gary Albright. Of course, Jun Akiyama. Of course, he just, debuting with that great Kobashi match. And, Jun Akiyama, for God's sakes, bringing in the Malenkos. Should be a lot of fun. Should be a lot of fun to see how they all go about there. Because we have a 38-person roster every time, we do a save. It seems like we double the amount of people that we should, as far as like on the minimal side. We'll be looking to add in some guys for sure and changing some of the roster around. Definitely wanting to get rid of some gaijins, bring in some new gaijins. Kind of treat it like All Japan would, as far as changing, people that are coming in and coming out and kind of doing tour shows. Or not tour shows, doing tour contracts in a way. The one thing I am nervous about is finances. With having 5 million, that's a nice starting point. But with having so many shows and a lot of guys are on per month deals, that's a little terrifying instead of per show deals, but I think it's going to work. Just fingers crossed that we don't completely sink the All Japan ship. And it's going to be fun to battle New Japan. To be now having, we battled them before, but to now battle them again when we're starting in the prime. It's not going to be that much of a battle compared to what it was then, because I felt like it was a little bit more even keel, but we'll see. We'll definitely see. As I mean, I know a lot of people probably see me as the TW Japanese Pro Wrestling guy, which is great. I don't like shit away from that or anything, but I will say it is pretty cool to be able to do an All Japan, New Japan, and Pro Wrestling Noah Save all at the same time in different eras too, even though it's technically not, but it is 3 different decades. From the 90s to the 2010s and, the 2020s with the New Japan series. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. And to be able to continue the All Japan journey. Very awesome. Very, very excited. I hope you all are as well. As we'll catch you guys next time as like the last series we did. Saturdays is this day for the episodes and for the series, which is exciting. But hopefully, everything goes well, and we have some kick-ass shows. We have some kick-ass matches. I'm not expecting a whole lot, even though it is the start of the series. You do have to understand. It's like obviously there's going to be a growing point where you're probably not going to have like shows and matches that are in like the 70s or 80s range. But who knows though? We do have a pretty crazy schedule. But from what usually happens, you kind of start not at your best and strongest. So I think that's a great time to have this Summer Action Series, to really have this trial period before the Giant Series, and we have some big-time matches. Hopefully, everything goes well. Thank you all, and we'll catch you guys next time. Take care, everyone.